This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Grant.
Good Tuesday morning to you, Grant. A little rainy outside, but still not stopping us from talking about the game we love, football. I love football, Grant. Do you love football?
I love it, too. And the game last night, that was just a love football game.
I think it warrants a good old... I just felt like that was necessary to get our show going this morning.
I'm so glad you have that.
A little Go Pack Go.
I didn't know that we had that.
I found that in my arsenal this morning. I'm like, I have Go Pack Go, and I am going to play it because the Green Bay Packers won last night. When your favorite team wins in the NFL, you need to revel in it just a little.
Yeah,
Not a lot, but just a little. But
getting a win isn't easy.
It's not, especially like a team like Kansas City, who played very well last night defensively. But we'll get into that in just a little bit. We do want to take a moment to remind you, though, that you can catch the Bax and Grant Sports Show right here live on Spreaker.com and on Periscope from 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time. You can also get us on Sports Radio America from 11 to 1 p.m. Central and on Live 365 and TuneIn. Then you can get us on demand anytime on iHeartRadio, iTunes, and on Spreaker.com.
You can also find us on Facebook at the Bax and Grant Sports Show and on Twitter and Instagram at BG Sports Show. On Twitter, Baxter's personal Twitter account is at Baxter Colburn, and mine is Grant's Rant, at Grant's Rant, BGSS.
Yes, indeed. And if you ever want to get a hold of us, you can drop us an email at bgsportshow@gmail.com. We love hearing from you listeners and always want to know how we can make our show better as well. So good morning to all of you tuning in to us on Periscope. If you have any questions or comments about the week through action in NFL, we'll have David Kenyon on our second segment, our fantasy football expert from Bleacher Report. If you have any questions you'd like us to ask him, please feel free to submit those questions anytime during the broadcast, and we'll do our best to relay them onto him as well. All right, Grant. Well, last night, as we mentioned, was the Monday Night Football game between the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Not a bad showing from either side, although the scoreline suggests that the game was much closer than it actually was. And as those of you that didn't know, Green Bay did come out victorious, 38-28.
And Baxter?
Yes, Grant.
I just want to say that we called it.
We did. We did call it.
And
we called a lot of things about last night.
We did call a lot of things, but the one thing that I was most upset about, that I knew was going to happen, because it's a Green Packery thing to do.
A Green Packery, yes.
Yeah, a Green Packery thing to do.
Okay.
Is to ruin things that have been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
For example, a Kansas City Chiefs player, wide receiver, finally caught a touchdown pass in a game against the Green Bay Packers. And we were right last night in saying 18 games. It had, up to that point, been 18 games since the Kansas City wide receiver has caught a touchdown, and now that streak has been ruined because of the Green Bay Packers.
And to be fair, it was a good play by Jeremy Maclin. Alex Smith doesn't know how to throw a football past 20 yards anyway, so the fact that he was able to find Maclin, who had a very good game last night, and if you look at the stat line for Jeremy Maclin, he has 8 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown. All that came in the second half.
Yes.
That was not throughout the entire game. He started making receptions in the second half out of 11 total targets. So for fantasy owners, if you had Maclin last night, I'm sure you were thrilled by that. If not, well, sorry. But even still, though, good for Maclin to actually put up a bit of a decent showing. We thought Travis Kelce might be a little bit more involved last night. He did not too bad. 6 catches for 80 yards. Not awful from a tight end's perspective,
not at all.
But considering that we thought he would be Alex Smith's favorite wide receiver or just target last night, that he didn't get the ball as many times as we thought he would. It was interesting, though, to see Alex Smith, Jamal Charles all did fairly well last night. Alex Smith, a little under 300 passing yards on the night, a touchdown and an interception to his name, completed 24 out of his 40 passes. There's one thing I do want to make mention of, and it was Jamal Charles last night. Jamal Charles, on the ground, did not have a very good day. He only had 49 rushing yards on 11 carries. However, the 3 touchdowns he scored last night were all inside the red zone.
Right.
And that can cause some questions if you're a Green Bay Packers defenseman who's reviewing film today in the room saying, all right, well, that's great that we won the game, guys. Hey, good job. Yeah. But we allowed 3 red zone rushing touchdowns on almost the same play. It was that shotgun draw play, basically, up the middle.
Well, at least what it was for the third one was it was the last drive of the game, or second to last drive of the game, I guess, or one of the last ones. And all you have is pass play. And there were about 7 yards out.
Yep.
So they were expecting another pass play. So they spread out, and they all had defensive ends in, so they could just get as much pass rush as possible. And they were spread out, and they spread out a little bit too much, and they just had the middle of the line wide open. There was a huge gap, and they're like, why not try it? There's
and credit
nobody
to Jamal
there.
Charles, because he did play very well last night. I mean, in terms of being able to execute inside the red zone. Yes, if you're Jamal Charles fantasy owners, or if you're Jamal Charles fans of Kansas City as a whole, you don't want to see your premier, probably elite run. I'd say he's an elite running back. Only get 49 yards last night against a traditional running defense like Green Bay.
If you're still fantasy, you got at least 18 points from him.
Exactly. So
I mean, I wouldn't
be so upset.
I wouldn't be upset. But what is good for the Packers defense pulling out of this game that you could look that, okay, you faced Matt Forte, did not handle him very well at all. But then you go and you face beast mode.
Yeah.
Marshawn Lynch. Hold him under 50 yards. Then you go and face Jamal Charles, another elite running back. Only 49 yards. So they faced 3 elite backs this year, and they've been
I wouldn't call Forte elite. I would say he's a great running back.
You're not going to call Forte an elite running back in the league right now.
Not right. I wouldn't say he's elite, no. I would say Marshawn and Jamal are elite because of how much that they can completely change a game. Forte is a great running back, but he's not an elite running back.
Forte is the only sense of the word of offense that the Bears have.
That doesn't make him elite, though.
That makes him elite because teams' defenses know that they're going to hand off the ball to him. Green Bay Packers set up run defense, run specific plays. Didn't even care if they were going to get burned with the pass to try to stop him. Still cannot stop him. I think he's an elite running back. Because of that reason, teams, all they know they need to do is set up to stop him. And he can still gash defenses with his ability. It did not go so well last week just because it was the Legion of Boom. And you need at least some passing game to relieve from the run.
And to be fair, though, for Chicago, they have some of their premier guys out now.
Right, exactly.
So
their top 2 receivers are injured.
Yes.
So
that's
yes,
hard.
But that's why Forte did not have as great of a game last week. But I have no problem saying Matt Forte is an elite receiver. He's one of the running backs. Excuse me. He's one of the best running backs in the game right now. I think if you go and ask any head coach if you think Matt Forte is an elite receiver running back, an elite running back, they would tell you yes. But anyway, so
going back to the game last night.
But just to finish my point, the Packers defense has faced, in my opinion, I'll say, 3 elite running backs.
Sure.
And minus Matt Forte, they've been able to handle him pretty well.
They have. If you can allow under 100 rushing yards in 2 games, that's something that you want to credit your defense for and say, hey, you guys are stepping up. And
especially since that was a major concern.
It was.
Going into the season, because last year that was a big problem.
Oh,
and then
a gaping hole problem, yeah.
In preseason, me and you were talking about oh, yeah, there we go. There's that beautiful rush defense that we see again.
Consistent, if nothing else.
And the first game, it looked awful. And then these last 2 games, it's looked excellent. So it's good. It's good to see if you're a Packers fan.
It is. Well, if you were a Packers fan last night, you were thrilled, obviously, by the 38-28 victory. But you're also thrilled just simply based off of the absolute essence and aura and everything that has to do with Aaron Rodgers, because he continues to prove that he is the best quarterback in the game today.
Yes.
Throwing for 5 touchdowns and 333 yards, posting a 138 quarterback rating. We mentioned in our pregame show last night when we were talking at Moran's Pub for our live broadcast that we thought Kansas City would probably rush Rodgers a lot outside the pocket, make him throw some uncomfortable passes, and probably sack him a handful of times. They only got him once last night.
And they blitz very frequently.
They did.
So that goes to show that it didn't really affect him that much. And I figured that it wouldn't, because Rodgers is why do I keep on saying mobile? He is
all hung up on Alabama.
Jeez,
mobile.
I don't know. I do not know. He is a mobile quarterback, and he is a smart quarterback.
He is.
He knows what to do with the ball. And yes, sometimes he gets sacked, but that's just going to happen. It only happened once.
Yeah, the announcers last night were comparing him to Joe Montana with his quick feet, how his feet are always moving. He's always got a purpose for what he's doing, and we saw that last night. That's how he was able to throw 3 touchdowns to Randall Cobb last night, which made my fantasy team victorious.
Yeah,
Thank you for that, Randall.
You were only behind 3 points, and then
I
it's like
was.
Randall
I had
Cobb
Alex
went
Smith
off.
and Randall Cobb left on my team, and I'm like, well, Alex Smith, I don't know. Randall, it depends on if Aaron's feeling Randall tonight or if he's going to spread it out. And Rodgers did a good job completing, 24 of his 35 passes last night that he attempted. James Jones and Randall Cobb led the way in receiving yards last night. James Jones had 139 yards on the night and 1 receiving touchdown. So we're starting to see strong, consistent performances out of James Jones, which if you're a Packers fan, that's huge to see. Randall Cobb with his 3 touchdowns only quote unquote got 91 yards last night. Eddie Lacy was the third leading receiver last night with 41 yards. And then you look at a guy like Ty Montgomery, the rookie, who was able to get on the board for the first time this year. He had 2 catches for 14 yards and the first touchdown, the first Lambeau leap of Ty Montgomery's career. It was great to see the young rookie get on it.
But he did have a couple of penalties that did hurt the team.
Yes.
Penalties was a huge issue last night by both sides, and that's just kind of something that's been a big thing in the NFL right now.
It has been.
What is an average of 15 penalties per game, which is up by, I think they were talking about at least 3 per game on the average. There are constantly more and more penalties. And last night, the announcers were just like, no surprise, another penalty. I believe one stretch there was like 4 back-to-back plays where there was a penalty.
Well,
so
the long drive
ridiculous.
that Kansas City had towards the end of the game, where it was, I think, 18 plays or whatever, when they scored that last scoring drive for Kansas City, I think there were several plays on that drive that allowed them to keep moving up the field.
And 2 fourth-down conversions as well on top of that.
Yep, exactly. I got to give a quick little shout-out to the special teams. Mason Crosby did well last night. 1 field goal, 44
But not
yards.
as well as he needed to.
I know.
He was a field goal short. He was a 40-yard plus field goal short from tying the game.
For you.
I was just, on the last drive, I was like, rush it to the 39, because then they wouldn't have gotten a first down, but it would have maybe in field goal range. And I'm like, then try it. But they didn't get close enough.
Should have just trotted him out there and just taken a shot just for the heck of it.
Just for me.
They knew. They're like, Grant needs us to kick field goals so that way he can win his fantasy game. Heck yeah, let's go, everybody upfield.
Yeah, but I do want to make one quick point about Eddie Lacy. Even though he had the ankle injury, he did a pretty decent job last night. He had 10 carries for 46 yards. 13 was his longest rush, and his average was 4.6 yards a carry.
Not terrible.
He actually did pretty good, and those have been pretty consistent for Eddie Lacy, about that 4.6 average. So he's turned into a pretty reliable, consistent back. And I've been pretty critical of Eddie Lacy over the years, and my wife was telling me last night, she's like, why do you just hate on Eddie Lacy? I'm like, I don't hate on Eddie Lacy. I'm just critical.
Just have a strong opinion against him some days.
I want the team to do well, and so if there's somebody that I don't think that's playing well, I'm just going to say it.
Fair enough.
But I think this season Eddie Lacy is doing a very good job.
We are. We're seeing some good stuff out of Eddie Lacy, and we will talk to our fantasy expert, David Kenyon, next segment from Bleacher Report, and maybe see what he thinks about Eddie Lacy's long-term production for the Green Bay Packers and fantasy owners as well. We will be right back. This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Grant.
Welcome back inside the studio as we continue to roll on with the Bax and Grant Sports Show. I think we need to hear it one more time, Grant.
Go, Pack, go!
We're celebrating a Green Bay Packers
Oh, I love
win.
that. I love that we have that.
It's a great, great feeling to have here on the Bax and Grant Sports Show, as we know that the Green Bay Packers won last night. Maybe your NFL team won over the weekend. Maybe they didn't, regardless of it.
I don't care as long as the Packers won.
Well, Grant has less remorse for you than I do. If you play fantasy football, though, you know that Tuesdays are the time on our show where we bring in a good friend of the show. That would be David Kenyon of Bleacher Report and the Sports Knot. We call him we just call him the encyclopedia as a whole, just because of how knowledgeable he is of the sports world. Good morning, David. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
That's good to hear. Is it raining down by you like it is up here? We've got some pretty steady rain here.
Nope, not right now.
Well, that's a good sign. Did you have to open your window to check? It sounded like you popped your head
it's
on the
like,
window.
I haven't even decided to look outside yet today.
Nope, I haven't.
Oh, hey, that's nothing wrong with that. You've got your office that you got to do your work in, and just that's how it works sometimes.
You got to do you.
Exactly. Well, David, an interesting week in fantasy football for many owners. I know that some folks were excited how their players did, some not so much. But we saw some surprising performances from a few different players this week, and we're curious to know some of your thoughts about some of the top performers in fantasy football.
Well, this past week, it was a very adventurous week, to say the least. There are a lot of high scorers. The biggest one, of course, was Devonta Freeman, the running back from the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes.
It's really, really helpful when your team gets inside the red zone so many times, and then he scored touchdowns of 3, 2, and 7.
Sometimes that's all you need.
Exactly. Most importantly, I think he got 60% of the red zone touches, somewhere between 55 and 60, and that's a great sign moving forward as long as Tevin Coleman is out. Because he has a rib injury, and head coach Dan Quinn had said he's going to miss multiple games. Other than that, Rodgers, of course, at home. If you ever take Rodgers out of your lineup either way, that's an issue.
Yes.
A.J. Green had a great day. A little lucky maybe to get an 80-yard touchdown, but I mean, even if you take that out,
and that was just a great performance from him, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even if you take that out, it's 9 catches, 140 yards, and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just splitting hairs at that point. So just a great finish to a great day. And then otherwise, Cardinals defense took care of Kaepernick.
Oh, my
that
goodness.
San Francisco offense is terrible. But that Cardinals defense is going to make some serious noise in the NFC back into the real world. But back to fantasy.
Yes.
LeGarrette Blount exploded 3 touchdowns, except most of his touches came in the second half.
Wow.
So Dion Lewis still looks like the starter in New England, and LeGarrette Blount, I don't know if he'll be the short yardage guy, but he'll definitely be the second half guy if New England is trying to close out a game.
Now, quick question for you before we talk about what to do on this first bye week in fantasy football. I have Carlos Hyde on my fantasy team, and as most folks know, he does play for the 49ers. With the apparent downfall of San Francisco's offense, is it worth it to continue to keep starting a guy like Carlos Hyde for people that have him on their team?
That's a great question, and that applies to so many other players, like Justin Forsett on the Ravens and Jeremy Hill for the Cincinnati Bengals. These guys were supposed to be, in Hill's case, your number 1. In Forsett's case, probably your number 2. In Hyde's case, your number 2. What do you do with them? Well, you can panic and release them, which would be the not optimal idea.
Very true.
You can put them on your bench because they're not performing, which, considering your backup, is the most important part. Now, in your case, Bax,
yes,
you have Adrian Peterson. You're good there. Joseph Randall, definitely this week, with New Orleans coming up,
Yep.
Joseph Randle's in your lineup.
Oh, yes, he's going to be for sure.
I'm so upset
And
I didn't
then-
accept that trade because he wanted to trade for him, and I said no, and mistakes were made.
You know, you can always reissue a trade if you feel like it. I don't necessarily know if I'll say yes, but you can
Hey, you
ask.
need a kicker. I said Mason Crosby for Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, I think we were going to ask you about that. Does that seem like a fair deal in your expertise, Mason Crosby for Adrian Peterson, David?
I think it's almost there. I think he might need to throw in, a good player.
Or maybe like $1 million for compensation or something like that, or a draft
Can
pick.
you send me some cash for that, cash for my player and a pick? I think that would be handy. Well, as we explore the fantasy football world, it is the first official bye week for fantasy owners and for the NFL, but no one really cares about the NFL. They just care about their fantasy teams at this exact moment. Nothing against the NFL, but with the way fantasy football is going, what is going to be the most difficult thing for fantasy owners having to deal without this week? Is it going to be the absence of all the Patriots, or will there be other players out there that people are going to want to look for a suitable backup for?
It's definitely mostly on the Patriots. The only teams that have a bye this week are the Patriots and the Tennessee Titans.
Off.
So Tom Brady, as long as he's in your starting lineup, ha 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 ha. He was in my lineup, didn't make a difference.
Well, you also had Devontae Freeman on your bench.
Yeah, I know, but even with him in, wouldn't have mattered.
That's
Danny
true.
had such a good week. Another story for another day. Or later time, or something. I don't know.
Either
but
way.
the Patriots, you have Brady, Deion Lewis, LeGarrette Blount, maybe if you thought about having him in your flex spot, or if you're in a deeper league, Blount will, his absence will hurt you a little bit.
Yes.
And then obviously, Gronk. Gronk's the best.
Sad day.
He won't be the best for your team this week. And then Julian Edelman as well. I don't really know what to make of Danny Amendola yet. He's getting some pretty good. He's getting a pretty good level of targets
Okay.
each week, but I don't know if that's sustainable. But I mean, that Patriots offense, if you have pretty much any of them, yeah, you're going to miss them. The Titans, Marcus Mariota has emerged as a fantastic quarterback ahead of schedule in real life,
Yes.
and a very consistent fantasy quarterback.
Which I think a lot of people are a little surprised about. I mean, with rookie quarterbacks coming into the NFL, it's always, I feel like, hit or miss with them. But we've seen Mariota more than Winston really start to step up and produce at a pretty good level through the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, definitely. So I really like Mariota moving forward. If you want to plug and play 17 points, he's your guy.
Now, another question coming from my fantasy team. I have the Minnesota Vikings and the Denver Broncos for my defenses this week. Coincidentally, they play each other this week as well. It's difficult because I don't want to sit Adrian Peterson because, Denver's defense could take some points away from that. But is it worth starting the Vikings defense, or is it a case where you keep Adrian Peterson in and the Broncos defense and just hope for the best and that they don't slow each other down?
It's tough because you have the best at one, well, not the best, but one of the best at one position against the best at one position.
Yes.
But I don't think you can take out the best defense just because they're playing a good player. Adrian Peterson's not going to make that team. He's not going to make that offense. The Denver defensive line and linebackers are so good, and that Minnesota offensive line is shaky enough that there's going to be an issue. But you're never going to bench Adrian Peterson.
No,
you
and I wasn't.
You roll with it.
Yeah, and I wasn't feeling like that I would potentially bench him. I think for me it was more of a question of, do I start, Minnesota's defense or Denver's defense and just kind of hope for the best. But Denver's defense, like you mentioned, they're playing absolutely lights out right now across the board. If we saw a little bit more consistency out of Arizona's defense as well, I feel like we'd be having a similar conversation with them. Grant, any questions for the fantasy expert today?
I was going to say, I know you're going to yell at me, David, but I'm really tempted, and now I just looked who they were playing, and of course it's Jacksonville. But I really, really want to sit Andrew Luck. But they're playing Jacksonville next week. And for the love of the Lord, if Andrew Luck throws at the game that he had, the game he's been playing the last 3 weeks, if he has another one like that, I'm gonna trade him. I'm just about done because I see Andy Dalton just going off and for the first 3 weeks has put up better numbers than Andrew Luck. So, if Andrew Luck is consistently bad, do I stick around with him for much longer?
I think, again, in my mind, you're sticking with your stud, especially in a matchup like this with Jacksonville. Now, if he has a problem against Jacksonville, I don't blame you at all.
Yeah, I would keep him in one more.
We are going to have this exact same conversation next week. You want to know why?
Why is that?
Because Andy Dalton plays Seattle on the road. No, it is at home, but they do play Seattle.
All right. Well, he did play. Now I'm forgetting who it was. Well, when they played, forgot who it was, but it was a fairly decent defense, and he came and absolutely dropped the bomb on him. So I'm not really nervous when he faces big teams, but I thought when he was going against the Ravens defense was going to be good. But obviously that has been about the Ravens defense. But still, I was nervous about that Ravens game, and he came out and did really well, and he dropped 30 fantasy points against that Ravens defense, and he's been doing well against a bunch of defenses. But I guess that you're right. It is Seattle. It is a completely different beast, one of the best defenses in the league. So it'll be a good test to see if he can handle that defense.
Now, another question for you. One of the teams in the Baxter Grant Sports Show Fantasy Football League is held by Corey Plath, and we'll be honest, he has not had the greatest year so far. I don't know if you have his roster in front of you or not, David. You know who you are. Forgive me. He just continues to struggle with multiple positions. He's got running backs like C.J. Anderson, Jeremy Hill. His quarterback situation's a bit of a hot mess right now with Drew Brees and Teddy Bridgewater. Are there any possible ways for a guy like Corey, who's got a lot of mid to lower guys on his team, to be successful, or is he going to have to start maybe hoping for some trades? Or what do you tell people that are 0-3 at this point in their fantasy league that maybe do they push the reset button, or do they just try to tough it out a few more weeks and then try to start trading players away?
Well, in Corey's case, it's exactly what we had mentioned before. It's one name I didn't bring up was C.J. Anderson. C.J. Anderson has been such a disappointment this year. 29 yards, 27 yards, and 18 yards and then the last one was affected by a possible concussion.
Yep.
So, again, this is the kind of place, do you want to sell low or do you stick with your stars? Now, I have the same problem because I am also 0-3.
Yes.
In the Baxter Grant League, and Corey and I have the same kind of thing. Mine, I just have injury after injury after injury.
Yeah.
And my starters aren't starting. And Corey, he had a bunch of guys who were supposed to be very good. His team is very solid.
It is, on paper.
And then he has an injury, Drew Brees. In a standard scoring league, Drew Brees is amazing. When he's on your bench, that's not great.
Yeah,
so
I don't know exactly. He's
tough.
trying to ride the Teddy Bridgewater train right now, but Teddy Bridgewater only got him 1 point in fantasy football last week, which is not what you need. He didn't play well for the Vikings as a whole, yet they still managed to win, but that was largely due to Adrian Peterson saying, "Give me the ball, coach," and he did what Adrian Peterson does.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Corey's team, Teddy Bridgewater, C.J. Anderson, Jeremy Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, Tyler Eifert, James Jones. I mean, that's a winning team.
That is.
So I think you probably give it a couple more weeks. But then if you're looking at week 5, oh, man, it becomes win now or don't win at all. And then you trade C.J. Anderson and Jeremy Hill for one starter, or a big-time starter and a lesser starter, and then you just kind of pray.
And that's what the conversation I was having with Corey yesterday. I was like, because he was voicing his frustrations. He's like, C.J. Anderson has been useless for me this year. He's like, I don't know why I drafted him. Everyone thought he was going to be great, this, that, and the other. He's like, I don't want to necessarily trade him away or even drop him because who's to say that, mid-season he finally remembers how to play football, and then I just feel like an idiot for dropping him.
Yeah, definitely. Those aren't players you want to drop. There is trade value there. But, yeah, it might be tough to find someone who wants them to take that risk, but it could be the missing piece for someone's team, and they might take that into consideration.
All right. Well, briefly before we let you go, David, can you give us a few players to keep an eye on this upcoming week in fantasy football?
If you have him, Le'Veon Bell is going to be amazing. That Pittsburgh Steelers offense without Ben Roethlisberger is going to be a more run-focused approach. I don't think there's a question about that. Otherwise, I believe Mike Evans is going to be back in the lineup, and so that's pretty exciting for Mike Evans owners who haven't really done all that well. Carson Palmer and the Arizona offense, Palmer, Larry Fitzgerald, even a little bit of John Brown. Those players are great. Maybe some under-the-radar names you want. I think this might be the week Melvin Gordon puts it together against a mediocre Cleveland front. So I think that
would be the time, to do it.
A very interesting situation to watch. And then one name that you might want to keep in mind moving forward and stash him away on your bench is Carlos Williams, the Buffalo running back. LaShawn McCoy last week had 11 carries for 16 yards.
Ugh.
And then on the other hand, I just had this and then it went away.
Oh, no.
Carlos Williams stepped in later on, and he scored a 41-yard touchdown. He also had 12 carries for 110 yards. He's a better fit for that offense. So I do wonder if there would be a legitimate timeshare and Rex Ryan would actually go to Carlos Williams in bigger spots, especially at the goal line, because he's a more physical runner.
All right. Well, we appreciate your insight this week, David. Before we let you go, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Kenyon19_BR on Twitter. And you can find me on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, David Kenyon. We appreciate your time. Good luck, and we will be speaking with you again on Thursday.
All right, thanks. You guys have a good day.
Yeah, man, you too. David Kenyon, the Baxton Grand Sports Show fantasy football expert, and he continues to make an interesting run, not only in our fantasy leagues, but also just with our advice moving forward as well. So thanks to David for his continued insight on the show. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, who is the best of the 3-0 teams in the NFL? We'll talk about it. We'll be right back. This is the Baxton Grand Sports Show. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax. Grant had to step out of the studio fast. He had a quick phone call he had to answer. He said it was important, so I trust his judgment and let him take care of that. So he'll be back in just a moment. So instead of waiting until Thursday, we actually get to speak with David Kenyon again. David, I feel like it's been years. Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing much better than I was 2.5 minutes ago.
Oh, my goodness. I'm so glad that your life has had such an upswing, and it's fantastic to speak with you again. It's twice in a day. I feel like Christmas.
I'm just happy to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it. I won't fine you for showing up, so thank you. All right. Well, David, we are going to be briefly looking at the 3-0 teams in the NFL right now and trying to figure out who's real and who is just a pure fraud. So let's start in the AFC with the defending Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. They're 3-0. 2-0 at home, 1-0 on the road. They've scored 119 total points this season, allowed only 70 points. Are the Patriots for real, or are they a fraud?
I think we all know the answer to this question, and that would, of course, be that the New England Patriots are real. They have a great win over the Steelers when they had Roethlisberger, a commanding win over the Bills until a shaky fourth quarter, a let's score on every possession victory against Jacksonville, and now a schedule that once looked brutal, especially if Brady wasn't under center.
Yes.
Cowboys don't have Romo and Bryant. The Colts look terrible.
Yep.
The Jets are beatable. The Dolphins look terrible. All of a sudden, you look at this Patriots team, we could be looking at a 9-0 start, 10-0 start, 10-0 before they face the Broncos. This team's for real.
And I was hearing, I saw an article headline last night that insinuated that New England with this team could make a 16-0 run. Is that a little far-fetched, or does that seem kind of accurate?
I believe it. Their schedule is so favorable. With their tough teams getting out of the way early.
Sure.
And having the Cowboys with the injury, the Colts struggling so bad. If they can make it through the Broncos, they get the Eagles, who have no defense, the Texans, who have no offense,
yes,
the Titans, the Jets, and the Dolphins to finish. That's 16-0. I can definitely see it.
Well, there's a very good possibility that we could see New England make a run for that on the 3-0 teams that we're talking about. Which of the 3-0 teams here in the NFL is for real? What teams are not? Looking now to the AFC North. The Cincinnati Bengals, they are 3-0. They've done 2 out of their 3 victories on the road so far this year. They've scored 85 total points, allowed 56. Andy Dalton, we always say he's a pretty darn good regular season quarterback. Postseason, well, that's another conversation for another time. But David, 3-0 for the Bengals. How do you feel about them moving forward?
I like the Bengals. I think this start only solidifies the belief that they will return to the playoffs. And like you said, Dalton in the playoffs, that's a different story for another day. We'll focus on that sometime in December, I'm sure. But again, if they can beat the Chiefs, which, by the way, the Chiefs need a victory in this game.
Yes.
But the Bengals, if they can beat the Chiefs, I mean, that's 4 wins before they play the Browns, the Texans, and I like it. I really like the overall makeup of the team. They're definitely not a 16-0 contender. The Patriots are the only one at that.
Yes.
But this is an 11-win team, I think.
Well, you have to look at that. Yes, I do think that the Bengals are a decent team, but I think that their record you were saying some of the teams that are on their schedule, that it's looking like it might be one of those years where people say they have a really good regular season, but they get into the playoffs and don't do but very well because look at the strength of their schedule. Their first 3 games, they open up in Oakland, get a win there, go to San Diego, and beat a struggling San Diego team that isn't as good as people thought they were going to be this year. Then they go into Baltimore and beat a Baltimore Ravens team that is not as good as people thought they were going to be, especially with Terrell Suggs being out for that Baltimore defense. So are the Bengals, I think looking at all of the 3-0 teams, the Bengals are probably, in my opinion, one of the weaker ones, just because looking at their strength of schedule and down the road how strong their schedule is.
I mean, the next 3 games
it is.
for Cincinnati are a little interesting, as we mentioned. Kansas City, Seattle, and Buffalo. So that'll be a true test to see just how good this Cincinnati team is. Talking with David Kenyon and my wonderful co-host Grant here about which of the 3-0 teams in the NFL are for real. We switch over to the AFC West now. The Denver Broncos, they looked pretty good against the Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football. They're 3-0. I feel some of their victories this season have been very deserved, and some of the other ones have been, well, they just happened to get lucky towards the end. They've beaten Baltimore, Kansas City, and Detroit now. David, what are your thoughts on the Broncos so far?
Well, first of all, better lucky than good. If you win, you win. And
Exactly.
You're not gonna complain about it.
That's all that matters.
But Vikings, Raiders, Browns coming up. I think Denver is 6-0 heading into a home matchup with the Green Bay Packers after a bye week.
Yep.
So I am very excited for that game. Denver, real, because their defense is absurd.
It really is. And
Good
you had mentioned
luck.
you mentioned at the beginning of the season saying, I feel like Denver's defense will be fairly good, but I don't feel that most folks that follow the NFL or even Bronco fans as a whole were going to be like, whoa, Denver's got a terrific defense that they're putting on. They've only allowed 49 points in their first 3 games. That's very comparable.
Yeah, that defense is amazing. They have all the right pieces for Wade Phillips' defense, and Wade Phillips likes to bring 5-man pressure, and I don't think you're going to find a better 5-man pressure unit other than Denver and Kansas City, and Denver just looks so good. And that offense is getting better. The pistol was a good look for Peyton Manning.
It did, yes.
He can do the pre-snap changes he wants to do from shotgun. And then with the running back behind him, it keeps predictability on their side, because if you're in shotgun and you have the running back on one side, ordinarily it's an inside zone or a sweep to the opposite side that the running back is standing. So right behind Manning in the pistol, it's basically the perfect formation.
I'd agree with you on that one. Yeah, it's been a really good momentum thing for Denver so far. Looking over to the NFC now, the Green Bay Packers, they're 3-0. I've seen some great things from the Packers. I've seen some questionable things. I don't think they're going to go undefeated this year, but I feel like they should post at least 12 to 13 wins this season. I could see them maybe dropping a weird game like they did in Buffalo last year, with the elements maybe playing a factor. But overall, I'm not worried about Green Bay. I feel like they're for real, and more than likely we'll get a first-round bye when it comes playoff time.
Oh, yeah, I'd be shocked if they're not the best team in the NFC. There's only one other team that I think would overtake them, and we're getting to them.
Yes, we are. I'm going to stop in the NFC South for a moment, because these are the 2 teams that really need to be asked the question, are they real or not? The Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons, both 3-0. Carolina with Cam Newton. Cam honestly doesn't care who is on the field for the offense. He's going to find a way to either get himself into the end zone or complete passes to other guys. In the past, we've seen Cam Newton struggle, but now this season he seems to kind of have his everything. He kind of seems to have it all figured out.
Well, look at, once again, I'm going to bring up the strength of schedule thing. You have to look at who they beat to get to 3-0.
Yes.
They have Jacksonville, week 1. Houston, week 2. New Orleans, week 3. Not strong teams. They have a bye week next week, but then they go to Seattle to play the Seattle Seahawks, and that's where I think that their undefeated season is going to end right there. And that's my opinion.
And
David, what do you think about that?
I agree. I think looking back at Cincinnati just for a half a second on that strength of schedule, the Oakland Raiders are not as bad as people think they are.
Agreed.
That
Well,
offense
yes,
is
but
great.
still.
And the Ravens, yeah, they're 0-3, but think about who they've lost to. The Broncos and the Bengals. So the Ravens, I don't think should be discounted just because they're 0-3. However, in this case, I could not agree with you more, Grant. Jacksonville, terrible. Houston, no offense. New Orleans, without Breeze, you better beat them. And they did. So credit to Carolina for taking care of business.
Yes.
They beat the teams they're supposed to beat. But like Grant said, after the Bucks, the Seahawks, the Eagles, the Colts, the Packers. We're going to learn a lot about Carolina, and I don't think Panthers fans are going to like what they see.
No, not at all. For Atlanta, they're 3-0. Julio Jones has remembered how to play football.
Nuts.
And
he has been just lights out this year.
He absolutely
lights out.
They're playing fantastic. I mean, they are averaging second best in the NFL in passing yards with 305 a game. They're scoring around 30 points a game as well, which is very commendable. Their defense, which was a big concern I felt going into the season, has played fairly well. Yes, they've allowed 72 total points, but that's not terrible, though. As long as you keep winning the games like we mentioned earlier, David, that's really what it comes down to. They've beaten the Eagles, the Giants, and Dallas. Now they look forward to a Houston, Washington, New Orleans schedule. So going into Week 7, Atlanta's got a fairly good opportunity to be 6-0.
Yeah, and honestly, you look at that schedule, they've beaten the tough teams.
Mm-hmm.
Their best games left on the schedule are Indianapolis, and I have no idea. This is the rest of the Atlantic schedule. I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound insane, because I don't think it's going to happen. This could be a 14-win team. The
Wow.
Texans and Washington. Trying to stop saying that.
Thank you.
Texans, Washington, New Orleans, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, Indianapolis, Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Jacksonville, Carolina, New Orleans.
Wow.
Oh
so
my gosh.
Good.
That is a weak schedule
I would
if I've ever
kill
seen one.
to have that
If
schedule.
the Green Bay Packers had that schedule, they would go 25
How does
and
a
0.
team get so fortunate to play all? I mean, I know that there's
the division, yeah,
but
but
even taking
still.
out their divisional games, their outside games that they're playing this year,
Tampa
is
Bay
just
is-
ridiculous.
well, that's in their division.
I
but
could see maybe
Jacksonville?
Minnesota stealing a win, but
Yeah,
even
possibly.
then, maybe Carolina in a divisional game, but New Orleans, no.
maybe Indianapolis.
If Andrew Luck
maybe-
remembers how to play football.
Exactly. But you have Jacksonville, that they're a horrible team. They've already taken one game off of New Orleans. That's what they close with in Atlanta. So at the end of the season, who knows?
Yeah.
But New Orleans isn't all that great. You have the two matchups against Carolina, which possibly is going to
I
be
could see them
the
splitting
toughest
that.
challenges of the season. But then other than that, it's Tennessee, Washington, Houston. It's not these huge, tough teams.
It's not, no. All right, David, well, before we let you go, as we're talking about which of the 3-0 teams in the NFL are for real and not, we're speaking with Bleacher Report's David Kenyon here on the Bax and Grant Sports Show. All right, the last team of the 3-0 teams is the Arizona Cardinals. Are they for real? Are they just messing with people? They've scored 126 total points. They've got 49 points allowed. They look really good. And the first three games, here's the same question that we've been asking as well. They beat the Saints, they beat the Bears, they beat the 49ers. Teams you're supposed to beat. The next three games that they play, St. Louis, Detroit, and Pittsburgh. Not terrible teams, not great teams.
Well, St. Louis and Pittsburgh, I'd say, are a little bit higher than the Detroit
Yes,
Lions,
yep.
depending how we see how the Lions handle the Seahawks this next week. But I don't think St. Louis and Pittsburgh are too bad, but you just have to look at, for example, last week with the Arizona defense. This defense is probably second, if not maybe even a little bit better than Denver, but I'll probably say second best defense in the league or around there, depending where you want to rank the Seahawks defense, but they haven't been playing the best right now. But the defense is great. The offense isn't as good as the defense, but you have Larry Fitzgerald just doing his thing with 23 receptions already this year with 5 touchdowns, 333 yards in three games.
Carson Palmer's almost at 1,000 yards
Absolutely
passing.
ridiculous.
9 passing touchdowns, 2 picks. David, are they for real, or are we just blowing smoke?
They're the realest reel of real can get. I think a lot of people forget last year Arizona started 8-1 before Carson Palmer left was sidelined because of an ACL injury. So this is not a surprise.
I definitely
at
agree
least
with you.
in my opinion. And Arizona's defense, like Grant said, it's teetering on the edge of number one. And this offense is for real. As long as Carson Palmer's under center, this offense is for real. Larry Fitzgerald has an unbelievable connection with Carson Palmer. John Brown is an emerging deep threat, or he is an established deep threat and an emerging intermediate guy, and that's dangerous.
It really
Michael
is.
Floyd hasn't done anything, and they're still winning games. Like, yeah, you beat the teams you're supposed to beat, but they put 48 on the Bears. They put 47 on San Francisco. You don't do that just because you're beating teams like you're supposed to.
Exactly.
Carolina put 20 on Jacksonville, 24 on the Texans, and 27 on the Drew Brees-less Saints. Arizona put 47 and 48.
And they're averaging, 42 points a game right now? That's the best in the NFL. If you're averaging 42 points a game, that's critical for, continued success going forward. I mean, this, like you mentioned, this is an Arizona team that could maybe only end up dropping maybe one or two games if they get into a shootout with a few teams.
Yeah, and they do have Seattle twice. Green Bay is on the schedule.
Ooh.
Going to the Rams, it's always a pesky game.
Yep.
They do play Cincinnati. They avoid Big Ben, so it's fortunate for them, I guess you could say. But I think Arizona has a shot to be 13-3, maybe 14-2 when all is said and done, and take that first seed. But I think the byes will go to Green Bay and Arizona. They are for real. New England is bound for a bye. They are for real. And I am really taking stock in Atlanta now.
Okay. Well, we appreciate the time, David. I know a little bit longer than we normally thought we would have you on today, but your expertise on the Bax and Grant Sports Show is always welcomed. So thank you for helping us figure out not only our fantasy football advice on our last segment, but also figuring out which of the 3-0 teams are for real or not in the NFL. So thanks for your time, bud, and we'll talk to you again on Thursday.
You got it.
All right. Well, we'll be right back. We're going to go to another break. This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax. Grant was here, and then he had to scoot off. As we know, every Tuesday and Thursday, Grant leaves early to go to class because college is very important. Stay in school, kids. It is very important for you to make sure that you fulfill your academic requirements requirements, so that way you can graduate and then have a cool job like what I have and what Grant kind of has as well on the side, depending on what he's doing. Special thanks to David Kenyon of Bleacher Report and the Sports Knot. He's been joining us on the show today talking about the fantasy football week that was during the Week 3 action of the NFL, and also helping us decipher which of the 3-0 teams are for real and which are fake as well. Just a quick reminder, you can always get us on Spreaker.com and Periscope Monday through Friday live from 7 to 8 a.m. Central. You can also get us on Sports Radio America from 11 to 1 p.m. Central, and on demand anytime you want on Spreaker.com, on iHeartRadio, and on iTunes as well. All right. Well, before we go today, I've been conducting experiments the last about 2 weeks, along with my fantasy football team that I do on ESPN.com. I'm in the Bax and Grant Sports Show Fantasy Football League, which I'm 3-0 right now, which I'm very thrilled about. I've had a good rate of production from my guys so far, 310 total points, and only allowed 237. So it's been pretty good. There's been a few close games the last 2 weeks, but I've been fortunate enough to pull out 2 victories. Aside from that, I've been playing some daily/weekly fantasy football as well, and I have a few different sites that I've been playing with. You've heard us talk about Draft Fury. We had Ken Liao on the show a few weeks ago talking about Draft Fury and the details that go along with that. This last week in Draft Fury, I did well, but not good enough. Usually when you hear that a person gets 198 points for fantasy football in a week, you'd think, oh, wow, that was really good. And, well, yes, but no, it did not go as well as I wanted it to. The winning player dropped 275 total points. The interesting thing about the team that you can do on Draft Fury, as I've mentioned in the past, they have the pick'em pools. You can go on there, and they give you 8 pools of players, and nine pools of players, and you get to pick one player out of each pool. Doesn't matter the position. They just have, I think it's 9 or 10 players in each pool. So my team this week was Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman, Andy Dalton, Brandon Marshall, Derek Carr, and Terrence Williams. All those guys, except for Terrence Williams, scored points this week. I was a little upset, I thought, with Tony Romo being out, that Brandon Whedon would target Terrence Williams, especially with Des Bryant also being out. Didn't end up working out that way. Aaron Rodgers played very well, obviously, last night for Monday Night Football, along with Andy Dalton also. So I unfortunately finished, where did I finish? I finished 100 and something out of 425. So it didn't work out well for me on that one, but go to draftfury.com. You can check out the pick'em games that they have, as well as their other head-to-head and Fury Arena. If you use the promo code BAX, B-A-X, when you sign up for free, your first deposit up to $1,000 will be matched and doubled as well. So go do that, draftfury.com. I also was playing on FanDuel this last week. I didn't do very well, unfortunately. I did do well. I won one of my games, total out of all. I entered 4 different contests. I only play for free. I'm not a betting man, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe it keeps my account happy and my wife happy, which is important. I was in a 5-player league and ended up winning with a score of 126 total points. I finished first out of 5. Had some pretty good finishes across the board. 2nd out of 10 in another one, 6 out of 10 in another, and 8 out of 20. Some of the guys that helped me win one of the leagues that I was doing on FanDuel.com. There was great performances from Le'Veon Bell. I also had Kendall Wright from Tennessee. The Broncos defense really stepped it up for me this week also. I took a gamble on Cole Beasley. Didn't work out too well for me. He only got me 6.9 points. Bishop Sankey as well kind of messed with me as well. He only got 5.1 points, so didn't work out too well on that one. I also had the opportunity to play over at DraftKings, which I thought went fairly well. I didn't do very good, unfortunately. Once again, it's always funny for me, at least, when I play daily or weekly fantasy, that you hear about games like, oh my gosh, I scored 154 points, I scored 190 points, and you don't finish in the top 10, the top 20, because so many people play, obviously, but I had a very disappointing week on DraftKings this week. Also, some of my top performers on my team, I had Tyrod Taylor, I had Le'Veon Bell, I had Antonio Brown and Demaryius Thomas, and Latavius Murray also. I thought those are some good players, but James Starks did not do well for me. Dante Moncrief did okay. Eric Ebron Detroit didn't do very well, and then I had the Browns defense, which didn't work very well, unfortunately. So that kind of, nipped me in the butt on that one. And then 2 other ones here really quick that I played. I played in 6 different leagues this week just because I'm on the search to see which one of the ones I like the best. One that I found that I do really like, actually, is Side League. Side League is a iOS or Apple app, and you can go on and draft your teams, similar to what you do for Draft Fury a little bit. And this last week, you draft 2 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, a flex, and a defense. So my team that ended up actually helping me win this last week on Side League was Cam Newton and Aaron Rodgers, Julian Edelman, Julio Jones, Jamal Charles, Le'Veon Bell, Gronkowski, and the Seattle defense for a total of 260 points. So I recommend it. If you have an iPhone, go and download Side League. Just Side League. They're a lot of fun. I recommend them, and go give them a shout out and try them out. The other one that I played in, I also played at DraftOps.com. I had a fairly good showing, not as good as I needed from some guys though. I had Gronkowski, I had Demaryius Thomas, Antonio Brown, Denver's defense, Le'Veon Bell, Randall Cobb, Tom Brady, Adrian Peterson, Mason Crosby. So I got 183 total points out of that one. Didn't end up finishing in the top entries, unfortunately, but I still thought I played fairly well in that regard. So the winner of the league had 261 total points for him. So a good showing from them overall. So another exciting time here on the Baxton Grand Sports Show. Special thanks to David Kenyon of the Bleacher Report and the Sportsnaut as well. Fantasy football, I love it. I can't get enough of it. That's why I played in 6 different leagues this last week. If you ever have any questions about wanting to play, feel free to shoot the show an email or tweet at us as well. You can email the show at BG Sports Show. You can tweet at us at BG Sports Show. I am at Baxter Colburn. Grant is at Grant's Rant BGSS. You can also find us on Facebook at the Baxton Grand Sports Show as well. And then also Monday through Friday from 7 to 8 a.m. Central live on Spreaker.com and on Periscope. And you can also get us from Sports Radio America from 11 to 1 p.m. Central on Live 365 and TuneIn and SportsRadioAmerica.com. And then on demand on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and on Spreaker.com as well. Once again, special thanks to David Kenyon of Bleacher Report and the Sportsnaut for coming on talking fantasy football and helping us figure out which of the 3-0 teams are for real or not. Tomorrow on the show, you're not going to want to miss it. For all of you golf fans out there, yes, I know we're going to talk about golf. The FedEx Cup will be talked about tomorrow. Joe Wolfrath, our golf expert, will be on the show. Grant's got his rant, and the new Baxton Grand Sports Show Power Rankings will be released tomorrow as well, among many other exciting things. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Baxton Grand Sports Show. We will see you all tomorrow. Enjoy your day. And as we go out, one more time, because it's never a bad thing to hear.